I've been fishing Meadowlands now for probably about 7 years. I fished it a bit in the summer, but I've fished it more and more in the winter. I absolutely love this place, and I started fishing Paul Garno. Bless him, he's not with us anymore, but he used to run some fantastic leagues on this place. He loved his silver fishing, and I used to fish his matches. I helped him for the last few years in the matches, running the matches, and I've taken his league on. But there's quite a few leagues now. I mean, Wayne Sharman runs a lot of good leagues on here in the winter and summer. And the Randall twins, they run a good pairs league. But our Garblino league, as it is now, that runs from just before Christmas right through to the end of March. And the fishing's so varied that, you know, that's what's nice about it. It can be freezing cold, ice on it, and you can still catch fish. Or it's blowing a lovely warm southwesterly, and you catch loads and loads of fish on the pole. But say you've got to be ready for any conditions here, because the lake changes so much. See today, like the wind's blowing down this way, and you know, if you've got a warm wind, today's a cold wind, but if you can get a warm wind, the fish will follow it down. You catch roach, but especially skimmers. A lot of the time you have to target skimmers in these silver matches to do well. But you could catch them on feeder, you could catch them on a pole, you could catch them on a waggler. It's so varied, and you've got to get it right, because the standard of angler that fishes this league is incredible. We've got anglers coming from all over the place, some real top anglers. You know, Steve Hemingway has won the league a couple of times. I've won the league before. I was second last year to Steve Hemingway. But you've got anglers like Steve Saunders, Darren Davies, Simon Willsmore, Sean Ashby, Cam Hughes. I can't name them all, there's so many. But the standard is incredible. And if you do well in this league, then you're doing well. Because the section, although the lake varies dramatically in terms of depths, styles and everything, you know, the good anglers tend to do well, and they tend to shine where they draw, you know. It's so varied, and you've got to think very, very quickly. There's times like today where it's, like I said, it's freezing cold, where, you know, we just started fishing and we might not catch much to start with. But I always think this time of year in this kind of match is, you know, you've got the first hour to try and understand what's happening. Then you've got the rest of the match to catch them. You've got to find the right method to catch them, or the right way to feed. If you can do that, then you can catch enough fish in the last 2.5, 3 hours. Even in the last hour at this place, if the fish come in short and you start catching really well, it's dead easy to build a big weight up. So you can probably tell from my enthusiasm. I love this place. It really is brilliant, and it might be freezing cold, but the fishing's great. Okay, the gear I'm using today is fairly simple. I think I just work on the light side, basically. Starting with the rod. The rod's our new essential 10-foot light feeder rod. It's a beautiful rod, this is. And as I mentioned in the feature, I love to use glass tips. This rod comes with glass tips and carbon tips, so it gives you a choice. If you've got a big toe on the water, you can use your carbon tips. If you've got no toe or light toe and you're getting these delicate bites, fishing little hooks, you can see every little indication. It's so important. Beautiful rod. I can't stress how important it is to have a soft rod. Yeah, you're only casting very little feeders, very light feeders. The feeder I'm using is basically one of our 3 square Garblino feeders. It's about 20 grams of lead on it, but you can go up to about 30 grams normally. Again, depending on the wind. Just like a 020 or 022 diameter line, and going on to, that's the main line, and then going on to hook length, I use 010 or 012. The hook itself is fairly simple. Start off with an 18er, straightforward Camazon B911. It's quite a thick hook for this style of fishing, but I firmly believe that a slightly thicker hook is better. For these small skimmers, they tend to stay in a lot better. You don't pull out of anywhere near as many fish. So 16 and 18, again, using double maggots, single maggots, live maggots, dead maggots, pinkies. So it's a fairly straightforward setup in terms of products on there. The system I like most of all is I like to use what I call a swivel attachment, basically where I twist my line up and I have the line on a running swivel, twisted line boom. It's absolutely perfect. Lots of people have seen how I do it, and we can show you in a little bit of detail exactly how it works. This is what I call my twizzle boom. It's what I use for most of my feeder fishing. I absolutely love it, and I just think it's a really easy, simple but effective way of fishing, especially when you're fishing for these skimmers, because a lot of times the bites are very delicate, but if you could fish a fixed feeder, then you'd probably have a few hook themselves, but I think you'd also miss out on a lot of fish that feel the resistance. So what this does, it's on a twizzle boom, and the line is running over a twisted loop of line there. So it's stopped by a glass bead at the bottom, and then about 3 inches of line. At the top of it, there's a single overhand knot, and basically you can see that offers resistance there, so the fish can actually prick itself and hook itself on that if necessary. If you haven't already picked up on that fish, then it'll hook itself. I think it's a really effective method. It's quite difficult to show how to do that today, but there is actually a link on the bottom of this feed now, so if you want to learn exactly how to do and how to tie this, you can go straight to that and you'll see how it works. A lot of the time in winter we don't use a lot of bait, but I can't stress how important it is to have a selection of bait. You never know what works on days like this. You know, you can come at my bait, starting basically with the ground bait. I use Tom Thick's Intelligent Black and the 100% Pure Expander from Mainline. Great fluffy light mix. You can alter the content, but the ground bait's got to be dark. Yeah, there's beauty about the ground bait is it's very fine. So I'm not feeding them a lot with the ground bait. It almost dissolves in the water, this stuff. It's brilliant. And then what you do is you add the particles to it. So whatever the day turns out to be, I always start with very little in my feed, but I'll put dead pinkies, I'll put dead maggots, red maggots, a few casters, and maybe a few worms. I often start the session without worms at all, because I firmly believe that the ground bait and the odd particles in the feed at the start draw a few fish in anyway. And I think that keeping pulped up, very finely chopped worm up your sleeve for later on in the session often really helps draw fish in. So it's a real mixture of baits, and what I tend to do is put a bit of everything in at the start, like I say, and then I keep trying on the hook. I'll try double dead pinky, single dead pinky, double dead maggot, single dead maggot. Red worms, critical for me. They always get me a bite, always. When you need that bite, you get it, and often 2 or 3 tiny little red worms on a 16 will get you a bigger fish as well. So there's no hard and fast rules on what you should be feeding. It's all about experimenting. It's all about going through the session and trying to understand what works. But just keep that bait going in little and often, and you won't go wrong. Well, we're quite a way into the session now, and it's been quite a slog at the start, but this is in my book is classic Meadowlands fishing in winter for silvers. You know, there's always an odd fish feeding, but sometimes they really take quite a long time to get going. And for me, the critical thing is to get bites. It doesn't matter what fish you're catching at the start, it's all about getting bites. And I'm just trying to get bites so that I can keep feeding, keep putting. I fish with a a very small feeder, a little bit of extra lead, and start off with double pinky, single live red maggot, single dead red maggot. Just keep ringing the changes all the time, and I'm convinced it's my way I fish, that I've got to keep casting. I want bait to be going through the water all the time, because I believe that these skimmers, most of the time, they live off the bottom, and I feel like it's my job to actually make them go down and feed on the bottom. And especially at the start of the session, on a cold morning, where they're just sat up in that warmer thermocline, they're really not inclined to feed. So my view is, if you can get any fish feeding, then you're casting constantly. You're bringing, if it's small skimmers, perch, roach, anything, then you're getting the baits going in constantly all the time. And today was an absolute classic. We started the session and I've caught a skimmer straight away. I thought, here we go. But sometimes when you catch a skimmer straight away, it's not always a good sign. And then it just went very, very quiet. But I felt like I've got to keep casting. My way is to keep casting every 2 minutes, maximum 3 minutes. Little tiny feeder, fair, not much in the ground bait, but always something going in all the time. And slowly but surely, I started to catch smaller skimmers than normal, hand-sized skimmers. Oh, there's a bite, missed that one. But it's catching hand-sized skimmers, which meant, just like then, I've missed a bite, I'm back in, bait's gone. It tells you there's fish about. And I changed one thing. I actually started just putting ground bait in my feeder and not squeezing it as much as I normally would. So to try and get fish to feed, I've got just a real light squeeze, so that the ground bait's falling out of my feeder as it goes through the water. And I think that just encourages the smaller fish to have a go. Like I said, once they're feeding, once they're on the bait, there's more chance of you catching skimmers, better skimmers. And then it's just a case of ringing the changes, going through different baits to see what the best bait is. Excuse me, to see what the best bait is on the day. We've waited quite a long time to get decent fish, but what's happened, I was catching lots of 4-6 ounce skimmers at the start, but like I said, as the session's gone on, I've got the smaller fish feeding. That's a perch, is that one? I've had a couple of perch as well. I've got the smaller fish feeding, but now it definitely seems that the better skimmers have moved in. And I think it's all to do with getting those smaller fish feeding, and I did that basically by just squeezing my feeder less, same amount of bait, but just trying to release the bait from the feeder as it's falling through the water. The water's quite clear. We've not got much movement on the water either, no tow and very little ripples, a bit more ripple now. But I think the conditions were sort of telling me that the fish really wouldn't want to get their heads down on a lot of bait, and you just sort of got to be careful, feel your way into the session, and it's just getting better and better, this peg. And this is classic of what happens at Meadowlands and quite a few other fisheries like this in winter. If you chop and change with the method, often you can't build your peg. Like I said, if you were fishing a pole, you'd be constantly working your bait on the pole. You'd be constantly putting little bits of bait in, either through a catapult or a little pot on your pole, and trying to get that bait falling through the water. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with this little feeder at a slightly different distance, and it just works exactly the same. But you've got to be so regimental. At the start of the session, I'm talking 2 minute casts, But as the session moves on, you know, I look less at my stopwatch and more at my tip, and I'm starting to sort of live what's happening then. So I know when I need to when I need to reel in. I'm feeling that, and that's what it's all about. And it's the same with reading bites. Sometimes you're getting the tiniest little bites, and you lift up and they're on. Other times, there's nothing there. But it depends on the day, and you've got to. It's like, you know, when a float goes under, you've got to look. Was that the right bite? Should I strike? And it's trial and error. You've got to see what the best way is. Sometimes a bite, they'll rip. You know, these skimmers will rip the rod round when there's a toe on the water and the line's straight and pulling tight. Other times when it's slack like this, and I'm not fishing a slack line, but I'm fishing with a very straight tip. I'm fishing with a fiberglass half-ounce tip, which I believe makes a massive difference, especially with smaller skimmers. Bite indication's great. They can pick the bait up and they pull the tip round, pull the line round. They don't feel any resistance, and I'm convinced that catches me miles more fish. Not been easy, but as the day's drawn on, it's just got better and better, and now we're into the period where the fish have been feeding well for the last hour or so, and it's been a really great session. You know, all I can say really is just think about it. Work hard when you skimmer fishing, when you're fishing a little feeder like this. You know, if you're in the area, in the Midlands, Meadowlands is a fantastic place to go and practice this kind of thing. It's a brilliant fishery for it, and Lambsdown Lake is superb. But you can fish like this anywhere up and down the country. There's loads of places. Just work hard at it, fish fine, and think about what you're doing. You'll catch loads of fish. It's really good method. Give it a go.